This is HighIntensityBusiness.com with Lawrence Neal, helping you achieve your health and fitness goals. Become a great personal trainer and build your high-intensity strength training business.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field. Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to HighIntensityBusiness.com. This is episode 264, and today's guest is Logan Herlihy. Logan is a high-intensity practitioner of over 3 years experience and supervision of over 5,000 high-intensity strength training workouts. He is ACSM certified and, more importantly, HIT Uni certified as a high-intensity resistance exercise specialist. Logan graduated in the top-ish of his class from the University of Central Florida with a degree in broadcast journalism and a minor in personal fitness. He's been with Discover Strength for over a year and a half. And before that, worked for My Strength Studio, which are now called Myo Strong. I had no idea about that. Is that a recent rebrand?
Yeah. Rebranded very recently, yep.
What was the thinking behind that then?
You'd have to ask Kevin. I think he'd be a great guest on your show at some point.
Yeah, that's long overdue, actually. I should do that. I'll definitely contact Kevin. Myo Strong are a super slow training studio in Minnesota. And in his time with Discover, Logan has become a regular presenter for the company in monthly client education seminars and has a passion for everything high-intensity training. Logan's first book it's because we were talking about Luke so much before this. He said, you didn't actually twig then, did you? Logan's first book on high intensity training, How to Look Good Naked, the least amount of effort to look the best with your clothes off, is currently available on Amazon and has a perfect 5-star rating. He's in the process of finishing his second book, which should be out sometime by the end of the decade. So are we right on the end of the decade if you're talking about this decade?
Yeah, next decade. By the end of the 20s, I think I'll have this next one ready.
Okay, right. So it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek sort of a joke, basically. It's not.
I'm trying to keep up with the British humor. I'm apparently not doing very well. So,
well, either that or I just have a terrible sense of humor. So there you go. But I know I did find it funny when I was reading it. But no, obviously everyone will be familiar with you. You've been on the show before. You were on the show before talking about your book, How to Look Good Naked, which I really enjoyed and have since had a number of friends of mine and listeners buy it and really enjoy it as well and get good results.
Well, thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. So really excited to catch up with you, Logan. Obviously, we talked recently about some other stuff, and we kind of got onto the topic of what we might want to talk about in another podcast together. And so there's a few things we can talk about, but I guess it would be only appropriate to really firstly sort of talk about what's happening right now, which is the whole COVID-19 crisis. You know, we're all in lockdown. You're doing virtual training sessions for DS from home. So what's it been like for you guys? Can you give us a perspective on how it's been for you?
Yeah, man, the whole situation is just surreal, and I'm sure you can empathize with that. But really, more than anything, what it's made me realize in the last few weeks, especially, is just how lucky I am to work for the company that I work for Discover Strength. I mean, you've kind of been keeping everybody up to date with how this progress has been going, but I listened to your podcast with Luke on Sunday. I went into work the next Monday, took clients all day, finished my clients at 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. that night. And then we were officially closed that night. By Wednesday of that same week, we were a virtual training company. So, I mean, just the speed at which, we started even hypothesizing about how we would change directions to the actual pivot has just been so ridiculously fast. And I mean, I don't think most companies would be able to do what we've done, and now we're really seeing success with it, and it's just awesome. So obviously not an ideal situation, but I just feel really really blessed today to be with a company that has such great leadership. Not just Luke, but the entire leadership team. They've just done an incredible job. So
I was so impressed by the speed as well. Just how quickly you guys pivoted your offer and made your brand and everything that you do congruent with that. It was just unbelievable. And I, in a weird way, I kind of, and this is going to sound kind of weird because I know a lot of people are going through some real hardships right now, but I enjoyed seeing you respond to a challenge like this and seeing other business owners around the world respond to this and see how people respond to this pressure and this test. So no, I was really impressed. And just, can you give us an insight into like what it's like being a trainer at DS? Like, how much input did you have during the process, or was it like the leadership team kind of decided on how things were going to go, and then it was like, okay, guys, this is how it's going to go? So I'd love to hear, and I'm sure the studio owners who are listening to this who want to become better leaders, better managers, could you kind of elaborate on what the experience for you?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. I mean, first and foremost, it's just been really cool to see, we hear people talk all the time about, leadership, and, Luke specifically touts all these books he's read, and he talks about, Winston Churchill in monthly meetings and stuff. And that's great when times are going well. But you really see what people are made of in tough times. And it's, like I said, it's just been really cool to see this pivot and how people have stepped up. So from our perspective, I mean, the biggest shout out, I think, needs to go to David Gerschneidner, who is our director of operations, who I know you've met before. I don't think he's been on the podcast or anything, but David basically got this, this to do from Luke, which was, hey, we're a virtual training company. We need some workouts. What are we doing? And David, within a matter of days, I know you're semi-familiar with the Discover Strength process, but we have a huge exercise menu, a huge offering that we bring to our clients. And we said, how are we going to make this something that they can do in the comfort of their own homes? And David took that challenge head first and just created an incredible virtual exercise menu that we've been able to implement and then kind of tweak as we go along. So that's the first part of the answer. The second part is, yes, we've had a lot of, our own say as trainers in how to kind of tweak this process, but none of that would be possible without David actually taking the initiative to just kind of create the format and the outline, and then allowing us to just manipulate it as we see fit.
And then you've been having these regular calls, right? I don't know if that's still going on, but in the beginning you were having regular calls?
Yeah, every day. For the first couple of weeks, it was for an hour. Now we're doing 30 minutes every day. So we'll have another call as a company. So typically we do, meetings in-house at locations. But because of the situation and the fact that we're all kind of spread out and nobody's actually in facility, the leadership team just thought it was especially imperative that we, work together as a company to do what Luke is always talking about, which is rowing in the same direction, which I'm pretty sure he gets from a Patrick Lencioni quote. So just making sure that everybody's on board and we all know what we're doing, and just kind of working out any kinks along the way. So we've been doing that.
But how many people are on those calls?
40-ish.
How do you run a call with that many people on it?
Everyone mute your mic and turn your camera off. And then if somebody has something to say, we're very polite as far as like, hey, Lawrence has something to say. He's going to unmute his mic. He's going to put in his 2 cents. The leadership team will respond appropriately. Or maybe I say, Lawrence, that's a great idea. I've been doing that with my clients as well. And then we move on to the next issue or whatever it might be.
Okay. And what were the directives for you guys? Like how quickly what did you have to do to get ready for this?
Make sure you feel comfortable using Google Meet, creating Google Calendar invites. But like I said, David did a fantastic job of even formatting a lot of the programming to a way that's familiar to the trainers. So he created Excel docs that, look like our workout cards, right? So it's just kind of a digital version that we have to acclimate to. But he just did such a fantastic job of creating something that we're familiar with. So it really didn't, my job is and always has been just, blow people up, give them an exceptional customer experience. And then the leadership team's job is to just make sure that I have the tools to do that. So honestly, it did not take much on my end. My sacrifice is I get to work in sweatpants these days. So.
Yeah, I should say David's great. David has been not on the public podcast yet, although we have got plans to do a free person podcast with James Fisher to talk about some research. I think David actually pulled some questions out of from you guys, or that James can answer some of the research he's done. So we actually postponed that because of everything that's happening, and there were just other priorities. Obviously, David is super busy with helping you guys run this, but he has also contributed some great stuff in Hit Business Membership, which I'm very grateful for. And he's just phenomenal. He's great at he's clearly very passionate about exercise. And,
yeah. Do you have a Google Calendar that you use?
I use iCal. I don't really use.
Okay.
Yeah. Why?
But you use like a digital calendar. Just a funny side note. So Dave was talking to me the other day, and he asked me if I would, during all this, he's like you said, he's running around like crazy. He still asked if he could train me. He's like, hey, I want you to get on my schedule. I want to do a virtual workout with you. And he's doing his workouts religiously. And he's like, yeah, just pull my calendar up on Google and then just throw yourself in there. And Lawrence, I'm not kidding you. I had a panic attack. I looked at his schedule and I was like, holy fuck. Like it is just layer of layer every day. And I even told him that I was like, it's going to take me a couple days to schedule something. This is making me have some anxiety just looking at your schedule. So I just thought that was funny. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's nuts. So are you guys all training each other virtually now? Because I know at one point you were still going into the studio. Maybe that's not safe anymore. I don't know. So is it all virtual, the trainer to trainer stuff?
For the most part, I would say 90% of it is right now. Minnesota is not entirely on lockdown. And we're trying to kind of set the bar with what we're delivering to our clients as well. So the message from the higher ups has been like, hey, we should be utilizing this as well. That's not to say that we can't occasionally go into studio. I've been making some calls from the studio at some points. But for the most part, like I said, probably 90% we're from home.
Yeah, good idea to eat your own dog food, isn't it? And really understand how the customer, what they experience, and it's really hard to meet them where they are unless you're actually going through it yourself, I suppose.
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of us, haven't done body weight squats for a long time either, right? So you need to know if you're going to tell somebody to do some kind of crazy finisher at the end, you need to know what that feels like. Otherwise, you're just being a dick, right? So you have to kind of, like you said, have a taste of your own medicine for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. As you know, I had a workout recently with Xavier, and am I saying his name right? I don't know if I'm
It's
saying
we just call him Xavier, but Xavier sounds way cooler.
it.
That's like
Xavier,
the
it's like
X-Man.
X-Men. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. No, for sure.
Xavier. Cool. Okay,
And
I'll
I'll be
remember
Wolverine. There you go.
that. Yeah,
We got half the crew.
So that was a really great workout, and I literally fell to the ground after the wall sit finisher at the end, which was preceded by a whole load of lower body exercises, and I just fell over, and he was just kind of laughing. He was like, we had to wait a good, I don't know, 10, 15 seconds before I could actually get up to say, do the kind of debrief, because I was just so out, I don't know if that's typical. I don't know if whether I was just being punished or whether that's just a normal experience.
Xavier's pretty brutal, man. I try to work out with him. I think I mentioned this in my email. I try to go out to Northeast when our studios were open, and I was working out with him on a regular basis, and he's awesome. So I would say that's a typical, and I'm going to call him Xavier as well. That's a typical Xavier workout for sure.
Cool. All right. So one last question on this, and then we'll move on to some other things we wanted to talk about. But can you give me a perspective, or give us a perspective on how you feel that personal trainers are really feeling right now? Not just in DS, but just because maybe DS is a little bit exceptional because it's such a great business and you have such great people and great leadership that I feel like you're really well looked after. But I'm just curious what you think. Maybe you talk to other trainers outside DS, I don't know. But I'm just curious on how you feel trainers are feeling right now, and what they're going through, how they're reacting, what's going through their minds, and with that, how the studio owners can really think about how they can take care of their team.
Man, I think if you have the right mindset and you have the right perspective, what you're looking at right now is opportunity. We've had a lot of discussions internally about this as just a company, of the fact that, obviously this is a terrible situation and this is something that we would never, purposely want to happen. But, great companies, great people rise through tough times and create new offerings. They take advantage of the situations and become better because of them. And I think the companies that we see that stay in business after this will have such an amazing offering to bring to their clients going forward. And I mentioned this to you, excuse me, beforehand. I've been talking with some other colleagues across the country, and to me, we've just opened up the marketplace to 7 billion people. Right. So, we had this mindset before, and, I've mentioned this to Luke in the past, like even in Minnesota, I think Discover Strength's offering is so good that if we had another high intensity studio open up right next door, I truly believe that both could be profitable and successful, because in order to succeed in this business, you don't need a huge market, right? You can have 100 clients and have a wildly successful business, depending on what your goals are, right? So now that we've had this opportunity to get basically a master's class in virtual training, I really think that we're going to be able to bring an offering to the marketplace that's never been seen before. And out of this, whether it's Discover Strength, whether it's, Perfect Workout, any other company that's making this pivot to virtual, if they really focus on this and create something great out of it, I mean, man, the sky is the limit with potential as far as who you can reach. So that's kind of how I've been looking at it. It's tough right now, but I think the silver lining is we've just had this opportunity to create something new that we never in a million years would Luke have ever said, like, hey, let's train people from their hotels on the road. Like, it just wouldn't have been worth our time. But now we have no other option. So here we are. I don't know if that answers your question, but
it absolutely does. Yeah, that's the right mindset to have. What do you make of, I don't know if you've seen much in the way of criticism from people. I've obviously seen a fair bit of it. Some people think that it's just not as effective as you using the machines that we know and love and hit. Some people think that it devalues the proposition because it puts us in this wider market where online services like this have been offered at scale for many years. The difference is obviously, I think the difference of a HIIT studio is you're offering a much more effective, efficient, expert-based, evidence-based workout that is different in the marketplace and will be worth its value, its price point. But what's your take on the criticism you're seeing about this style, about this offering?
I think that's a great question. I heard you ask something similar to that Q&A the other day, and all I could think of is these people really don't know their market. The people who are asking that, if they're studio owners, because when I see our clientele, especially our higher end clientele that drive up, we've got one guy that drives it's not a Bugatti, Bentley. I mean, a $500,000 car, right? He does not care about the cost of training at the studio, right? And now not all of our clients are like that, but we have enough people that even if this offering is great, which I do believe it is great, they are always going to pay the premium to have the premium service, right? So you can get by perfectly fine in a Volkswagen Jetta, but you buy a Bentley. Why? Because you can and you want to, right? So I think there's always going to be a market for Medix equipment. I think there's always going to be a market for great in-person studios. Until something amazing comes along and kind of shifts the foundation of the industry, which this might be that to some extent. But I think there will always be people who want to pay for the premium service. What I think studio owners should be thinking is, oh my God, I need to change my offering and my price point to really tap into this market of people who might not either be in my area or be able to afford my service, that now I can virtually come into their house and give them a great workout. And you can reach people wherever you want. So to me, you just have to kind of flip that mindset. Like, there's always going to be clients, and myself as well, that like, I just like equipment. I like doing that stuff. I know how brutal a body weight workout can be, but I just like going to the gym. There's, in my mind, I hope, at least for our industry's sake, there's always going to be people who feel that way. Now, as far as the efficacy, man, I would challenge that person to do a Discover Strength virtual workout. And as someone that's experimented with a lot of stuff over the years, I think the difference is you have to be mentally strong to continue to see benefits from at-home training. It will really test your mental grit in a way that using a machine might not. If that makes sense, because you are in control at failure, right? And I can't be there with you to really see if you're there. I can't add in that extra weight and give you some negatives. You have to push yourself. So to me, that's the real challenge, is getting people mentally strong. And that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah. I completely forgot where my mind was going. Then I had something else. That's it. Yeah. So, a lot of the listeners won't know that you have a background with all sorts of kit. You've worked for Myo Strong, formerly My Strength Studio. So you've used all the Renex equipment. You've used Medix, Nautilus. So, you're someone who has used all these different machines, and yet you still really appreciate the value of bodyweight training. Do you suspect that, what's your prediction on, I love this, everyone's trying to predict what's going to happen when things reopen, aren't they? And everyone, it's interesting. It's interesting just to talk about it. So, do you have a prediction on how you think habits are going to change? Do you think there's going to be like a cohort of people that will continue virtually, and then a cohort that will resume the in-person studio workouts? How do you think it's going to play out?
Man, I can't even really pretend to know. It's going to be interesting to see how long this thing extends. Yeah, and I think once we really get some definitive data on how dangerous this virus actually is, because right now it's still a lot of speculation, right? Like we know it's killing people, but at least in layman's terms, I have no idea if this is really significantly different than like a bad flu season, if this is something that's going to stick around for the next 2 years. Like, I just don't know. I've heard so many different things. So with that in mind, I just think the trickle back into all public space might be pretty slow. And if that's the case, I think, places like, I'm thinking of Owen Dockham's place in California, what is it, Live Oak, and then Everstrong.
Yep, Everstrong.
They only do one-on-one. Myo Strong, formerly My Strength Studio, only do one-on-one. Maybe that's the way we kind of have to transition forward, is people are just sketched out about being in large groups of any kind. Maybe there's a mandate for the next 6 months that you cannot have more than 10 people in any facility, right? So then we have to change our whole business plan. And I'm sure that our leadership team will adapt to that, but I can't even pretend to know. I for sure think that people will continue to do the virtual training, that are hesitant to maybe get back into large groups. And honestly, my best kind of prognostication that I could tell you right now would be, hey, invest some money in selectorized dumbbells if you haven't already, because I'm really thinking about, throwing $1,000 into Power Block stock. Because I think there's going to be a lot of people that are trying to build home gyms just in case something happens in the future. The biggest takeaway, though, that I hope happens is I hope people start putting a priority on their health. And I think that would be the big silver lining out of this whole thing, is that people who are overweight, diabetic, pre-diabetic, obese, 50% of Americans start realizing that they are the high-risk group. And unless they do something to counteract all those contraindications they have, the next time something comes around like this, they're the ones who are at risk, right? So, I'm hoping there's some kind of shift in just the entire mentality of the population as far as like, hey, I have to do something about my health. And there's this great virtual offering or in-person offering that I can take advantage of. So,
yeah. I totally agree. Like you say, the data is quite unclear. Like, you look at the fatality rates, but then you don't know how many actual cases are out there, only the confirmed cases. So the percentages are really off. And it really bothers me, because I go to I check in on the numbers every now and again, try not to do it all the time. I'll see is it the US right now, according to one of the apps, is 5% fatality rate. And that's totally off. It's probably a lot less than that. But the layman will see that and then become very fearful and start panicking, and their behavior it goes out of control. So that's worrying and frustrating, because it doesn't need to be there, really.
For sure. And let's not pretend either of us are infectious disease experts, but at the same time, right? Like, it makes sense to me that I've probably, if this virus is contagious, as they say, I've probably been exposed. There's a fair chance that I've already had it and potentially recovered from it. And we don't have that data, right? So, to your point, that 5% death rate, especially in concentrated areas like New York, like, it could be significantly less. I pray that it is, but we just haven't done the test to actually to see that, right? And that's what I mean as far as as the data comes out, as we get better testing, and people who are hopefully asymptomatic can go in and go, oh my God, I had this thing. I was kind of sick for a week. Now I feel better. Oh, okay. I got to give those numbers to the CDC to let them know, hey, let's bring that percentage point down a little bit. That would be my hope. But again, I have no idea what I'm talking about. So
no, not at all. That's a good point. Have you seen the Chuck Norris meme that was going around?
Yeah. What is it? Chuck Norris contracted the coronavirus, so now it's spending 2 weeks in quarantine.
Yeah, the virus is in quarantine for 14 days.
Yeah, that's funny.
Which I don't know. Maybe that's a little insensitive. People are going through some shit right now, and so. But hey, for sure, we got to find ways to take the tension off a little bit.
100%.
Yeah, no, great points. And, I think you make some strong cases. I think it's going to be interesting to see. I think it's my understanding that some countries that are reopening operations, they're sort of staggering it. So they're still not opening businesses or organizations who might have large groups of people, bars, restaurants, events, conferences, sporting events, things like that. So I guess if you're in events, or if you're in your business where you hold large groups of people together, then I think you're probably a little bit screwed's the wrong word, because you can pivot and go online with all that stuff and do virtual summits and things like that. Or if it's food, you can do deliveries, obviously. But I think that your traditional business might be on lockdown for 6 to 12 months in most cases. But that's entirely based on my prediction. So we will see.
Well, hopefully rec 2020 in the fall. We'll see.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. So hopefully, that's okay to go ahead.
Maybe we can just do it in a park or something. Just everybody's spread out.
Yeah, I can't imagine doing that virtually. That would be pretty poor. I wouldn't want to do that. So, I'm glad we got onto that stuff, because I just wanted to get your take on everything that's going on. But I also want to talk to you about something you brought up when we were talking offline, which I thought we have to talk about that, because that is so inspiring. And I think right now, inspirational stories are really important, So just with that said, when we did our first episode together, you kind of went through your background, but you left out some stuff, some tough shit you've been through. Can you talk to us about about that? And I know you, as you said there, you had challenges of alcohol, and I think it would be just really great to be able to understand, where you've come from and how things have really transformed for you.
Yeah, for sure. So, I think I mentioned in the first podcast when I was with you that I owed a lot of my passion and my gratitude for high intensity strength training to Kevin Ness, the owner of My Strength Studio in Minnetonka. And the real background of that is, I struggled with addiction for a long time. I started drinking when I was like 14 years old. And it was fun for a long time until, as they say, it wasn't fun anymore. And towards the end of my drinking, lots of, without going too deeply into specifics, we can ask questions and dive off on tangents if you want. But the really short version is things got really bad. I was in a life that I did not enjoy very much. I worked in hospitality for a great many years, about 10 or 15 years as well. So bars and restaurants. So drinking was just something that came second nature. You get off at the end of the night, you party and drink. And like I said, it was fun until it wasn't fun anymore. And then towards the end, I moved back home to Nashville. At the time, my mother was diagnosed with dementia. And so I was kind of taking care of her. And then sort of the stimulus that led to me trying to get some help was my best friend actually died in his sleep from alcohol poisoning. He aspirated. And we went and recovered his body the next day. And I got scared, man. I started throwing up a little bit in my own sleep at night, and I was worried that I was going to end up the same way. So I asked my family for help. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, I come from a family history of alcoholism. So my family was kind of waiting in the wings for me to finally ask, for their help. And they sent me to a great place called Cairn in Pennsylvania, which is a medical treatment center. So I detoxed up there. It was miserable.
How old were you at this point?
I was 28 years old.
Okay. So just to pause you for a moment. How come you got started so early when you were 14? Like, how does that happen?
I think it's just, I feel like if anything, an English person can relate to that, right? Do you guys even have a drinking age?
Well, it's 18, but yeah, no, I hear you. People do, some people do get started. 14,
so I
15,
mean, it was, it wasn't always blacking out when I was 14, right? It was, sneaking beers here and there. My drinking started to really turn pretty regular when I was about 16. So my parents got divorced, and we had alcohol around the house. My dad was traveling a lot, and the kind of stimulus that sort of set things off, I guess, was my best friend and I in high school at the time would just kind of, both of our parents were divorced, and we would just go back and forth to each other's houses when our dads were out of town and just drink our dad's wine. So literally by my senior year of high school, drinking became like a daily thing. And then in college, I was able to kind of keep it under wraps, I guess. I got really good grades. Like I said, top-ish of my class. I graduated with honors somehow. But I was functional for a long time until, like I said, I just wasn't anymore. So I can't tell you exactly like why I started that early. It just, kids I was around, I guess,
How did you fall into hospitality? Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay. So in college, as a lot of people do, I just started bartending. I was in a fraternity. So it was just an easy way to meet people, meet girls. I liked the lifestyle and stuff at the time. And then I went to a party school. UCF is a great school, but at least when I was there, it was, people like to have a good time, and you could find trouble to get into every night of the week. And I usually did. But those are, I think you mentioned this too, like, going to rec and stuff. And, now that you're in your 30s, you have a couple pints, and it's like you wake up the next day and it feels like you got hit by a freight train, right? But we never felt like that in our 20s, right? When I was 18, 19, 22, you like drink beers till 5 a.m. and wake up at 8 ready to play a game of basketball, right? Like,
very true. Very true. I remember I used to do that. I used to have a session on a Sunday morning, not a drinking session, a basketball session.
Oh, okay.
but I couldn't think of anything worse. But I would go out on a Saturday night, get really hammered, stay out till 2, 3 in the morning. This would be my sort of mid-20s, and then go to this basketball session at like 9 in the morning, and just be. I'd even sometimes do it fasted too, and just be like sweating it out,
Yep.
And I just can't believe I used to do that. I look back and now I'm like, there's no way. I mean, I hardly drink now, and it's just, I feel like a different person. But anyway, sorry, I cut you off.
Please totally go on. I mean, it's true, right? So, in those days, if you pick your friends wisely, if you pick the situations you put yourself in, like I said, like I've always been relatively smart. So in college, for instance, right, I was able to kind of to take advantage of the system, right? If you get good grades, you get to select your classes first before the rest of the student body. So after my first semester of my freshman year, I made sure I got all A's. So the next semester I could select my classes first. After my first year, I never had a class before 10 a.m. again. Right. So I kind of prioritized, the drinking habit and the fact that I knew that I was going to feel like shit the next day. Right. So I kind of prioritized my life around it, and I was able to make it, manipulate it, and still get good grades. By my senior year, I was only having classes 3 days a week because I selected the classes that, only were once or twice per week. Spread them out throughout the course of the week, and never had anything probably before noon, right? So 4 days a week, I could do whatever I wanted to do, and probably still 7. But, when you're in that, especially in the early stages, you make your life fit your habits. And it doesn't seem abnormal until you look back on it later and you go, holy crap, I completely manipulated my entire, educational career to suit my addiction. So,
do you know what I used to do? This is so funny because it really takes me back listening to you. I used to have a class on a Friday morning. So I did English and media at university, or we call it university, you call it college. And I only split it. So I did English and media because we don't do a major minor thing. We just typically do one subject.
Gotcha.
And, I chose, cut a long story short, I went to university just because it was a done thing. Parents expected me to go. All my friends went, and I chose English because I was good at it. But I decided that doing English in isolation was boring. So if I did media, it sounded kind of interesting, and would just give me some variety, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so on at 9 a.m. On a Friday was a lesson in media called pop music, where you would go and learn all about popular music culture and how that's changed over the
Lesson
years.
1, the Beatles.
Very good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a bit of a cop-out lesson, really.
Yeah.
Anyway, but Thursday night was like the big night, right, where we would all go out and get absolutely hammered. And I never ever went to that lesson on a Friday morning not hungover. So I would go, but I'd be sitting at the back, shaking with a Red Bull in my hand. And a friend of mine was always great at taking notes. And I said to him, "Do you know what, James? I'm going to copy your notes up later. So is that all right?" He's like, yeah. I was like, "Thanks, mate. You're doing me a huge favor." I never, ever once copied his notes up later. So that whole module was a total waste of time for me because I completely failed it, even though it was a relatively simple subject. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, ARX. Are you looking to create a cutting-edge, high-intensity training facility? Are you confused on what equipment to use or how to separate yourself from the masses? Well, then ARX Fit might be the answer you're looking for. I asked Mike Polano from ARX a few questions about how ARX machines are challenging the status quo of the exercise industry around the globe. Mike, if you could, give the listeners a quick summary of why ARX is so different from the traditional machines or tools they're used to seeing in most exercise facilities.
ARX is totally different than anything you've seen before. This isn't just another weight stack machine. We've looked at the last 40 years of exercise technology and used that knowledge to create something entirely new. ARX uses a new form of resistance, a motor, and we pair that motor with computer software so that we can maximize the safety, effectiveness, and efficiency of your workouts. So you may be asking, okay, but how does ARX compare to weights? Traditional machines you see in gyms today are based on lifting metal weights and battling gravity. What people don't realize is that when you're forced to lift a static weight like this, one that doesn't adapt or change while you use it, you're underloading yourself rep after rep. And this unnecessarily limits your ability to make improvements. With ARX, we've taken a totally different approach. We removed weights and gravity from the equation altogether. Instead, ARX combines our patented motorized resistance with our custom computer software to provide you with the world's safest, most effective, and most quantified form of resistance training ever. When you train with ARX, you are training to your perfect level of resistance, both positively and negatively 100% of the time. No more guessing what weight to use. ARX does all of that for you, instantly and automatically. We'll also track and measure every second of every rep, so you can quantify all of your workouts to find out if you're improving and by exactly how much. Whether your goals are bigger muscles, increased strength, stronger bones, or just to look good in a bathing suit, ARX can help you achieve all of these and more, but do so in a fraction of the time it would take compared to traditional equipment. If you're looking for the most efficient, most effective, and most quantified piece of exercise equipment on the market today, then look no further than ARX.
Thanks, Mike. That all sounds really impressive. If you'd like to learn more about ARX, visit arxfit.com and mention that you heard about ARX on the High Intensity Business podcast to receive an exclusive deal of $500 off shipping and installation of your ARX machines. Yeah, so I can, it's really funny listening to you because I'm like, probably didn't go as far as you, certainly, but, I had similar habits, sure.
Well, and that's the key. Yeah. And this is not to say that if you've done any of the things I've done, I'm not saying by any means that you qualify as an alcoholic, right? Because when we're in our teens and early 20s, we're all stupid, especially men, right? So we do stupid things that we probably regret later on. But the difference is you probably stopped for the most part after you got out of university. I found a way to keep the party going, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of friends that I partied really hard with in college that as soon as college was over, they stopped. They'd have a beer at the end of the night and, they started their careers and they started working, and I'd come back in town and visit. and they might rage with me, but they definitely couldn't keep up anymore, kind of thing, so you quickly see that the rest of the world is moving on without you, and you're just kind of stuck in this cycle of doing the same thing over and over again. So I think most people, at least that went to the school I went to, probably had similar experiences as far as like, if you'd have kept up, you might have qualified as an alcoholic. But I don't think being an idiot 19-year-old necessarily makes you somebody with addiction. So
yeah, you spoke about how you got into hospitality. You a bit of a ladies' man, Logan?
No comment.
Why no comment?
I maybe fancied myself that back in the day. But yeah, I mean, not so much anymore.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Reason I asked that is it's easy to get FOMO, right? If you're in that scene, hanging out with the type of people who like to go for a drink, and it's almost more about socializing than it is about the actual alcohol.
Yes.
Did you struggle with that? Because I can relate to that. Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I got into hospitality, into bartending in college, and then it was a great way to meet women. For whatever reason, there's like this universal understanding that if a guy comes up to you at a bar, it's like gross and weird. But if you're the girl and you're initiating contact with the cute bartender, there's nothing wrong with that. So for sure, there was part of that was a draw to being behind the bar. But I found a job at a bar that I really enjoyed and moved up in management positions through there, even through like functional alcoholism, essentially, because again, it depends who you surround yourself with, right? So I'm only bad compared to Brian, right? Who's way worse, and then in comparison, I don't look so bad, right? Brian misses his shifts. At least I'm here every day, right? I might be hungover, but I'm here. So it just continued. So I worked with that company for a long time, about 4 years. And then I finally got fed up there, and I actually took a walkabout and went to Australia and moved and lived over there for a year, thinking that the change of scenery would give me this brilliant wake up call, and I would find my calling and get my life together. And sure enough, I just ended up getting a job at a bar in a different country and doing the same thing all over again, right? Rinse and repeat, but with cooler accents. So, just change. Yeah. Well, there's some British people there. It wasn't all Aussie accents. So lots of different people over there. But yeah, so changing the scenery is not going to do it, is kind of the point of that. So did that for a long time. Like I said, moved back home, all that sequence of events that I just mentioned happened. And then, I decided it was time to get some help. So
what happened kind of during and after rehab then?
Okay. So Cairn is like a medical place in Pennsylvania that I went to first. So that was, they detox you, they put you on drugs to help you with seizures and stuff, because that's one of the ways that people actually can die from coming off alcohol, is through seizures and delirium tremens. So they have to make sure they have you closely monitored there. So I detoxed for a few days. I went into this facility, learned about my CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and like the history of why I do what I do, right? And this is not to downplay it. This place was very helpful, but it didn't really provide a foundation of this is going to keep me sober, right? It got me sober, but I knew in my heart that it didn't give me the tools to stay sober. So before I decided to move back home to Nashville, I was talking to my counselor there, and I was like, I think I need something else. And I couldn't afford to stay at this place. Just to give you an idea, it's $32,000 for 28 days at this facility. Yeah.
How are you affording it?
Long story. I wish I still had that money back. I I actually ended up getting a little bit of money from an inheritance from my grandfather before this happened. So a lot of weird serendipitous events that kind of led to, I've got this money that I've never had in my account before. I should do this thing that's really expensive. So needless to say, all of that money is gone. None of it still exists in my savings right now. I could really use it at the moment. But I found another place in Minnesota, actually, called The Retreat out in Wayzata, which is just a small suburb out here that was a 12-step based place. And I did another 30-day treatment there. And I found kind of the thing I was looking for as far as what I thought might actually work to help me stay sober. So I'm not from Minnesota, right? So after that 30 days, they asked me if I wanted to do sober living here, which I did not. I wanted to go home. But at that point, I was smart enough to realize that I shouldn't do what I wanted to do. So I agreed to do that. And then, long story short, I'm still here 3.5 years later. So,
wow.
And
So
that's where we can get into
crazy.
Kevin's stuff and all that.
Yeah. Well, what was it that fixed it for you then? What was the solution?
I mean, I don't want to get too preachy or anything on here because I don't think that's helpful. But I found help through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's what I use today. I go to meetings. I meet with a sponsor. I have a couple guys that I work with. But I think there's plenty of ways. You just have to find what works for you. And I just know that AA has worked for a lot of people.
And so you're completely teetotal now. Is that right?
Teetotaler? I didn't know people actually said that. I'm completely abstinent. Yeah, I take CBD, but my sponsor knows about that. So
okay, but that's just
I know. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so right, wow. So okay, so you're. So why did you laugh when I said teetotal? I totally missed the joke there. What was?
That's just not something we say. So
is it not?
No, it's not something we say, but they actually say it in the big book, like the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. They say teetotaler quite a bit, but you would never hear an American person say teetotaler. They
Why,
wouldn't even know what it
triggering or
means.
something? Oh, really?
But no, they just don't know. Like, it's not in our vocabulary. Yeah.
Okay, so Brits will always say that. Like Brits will say, "Oh, I'm going teetotal," or it's just part of the vernacular. You know?
We'd say sober or like abstinent, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So for you, if you did have a drink, it could be like it could set you off, kind of thing. It could be really bad idea. Is that right?
I mean, I'm 3 years sober at this point, a little over 3 years sober. I wouldn't drink, right?
Okay.
At this point, I've found a time in my life where, like, even if, like, the thought on a sunny day, right, like, oh, a beer sounds nice, which occasionally, not as much anymore, but occasionally pops into my head. It's like, I know what the ramifications of that are. And it's never, there's, do you listen to country music at all?
If it's on, I enjoy listening to it, but I don't typically go out of my way to listen to it.
Yeah. So there's a few songs that I'm sure have used this line, but it's like, one is one too many, one more is never enough. Right. So, I can't stop when I start. Right. So there's no like happy medium for me. It's completely sober or the wheels fall off the wagon.
Sure.
And that took a long time to accept, but it's the truth for me. So, yeah, I'm a teetotaler.
It's really interesting. And first, I just want to say I really appreciate you talking about this and being vulnerable. I know it's not easy, so I really appreciate that. But it's when you first told me about this, I was like, surely not. Just because you look like the picture of health, you look so vibrant and healthy. And in obviously great physical shape. And I had this, I guess, false narrative in my head, which I thought you just had this, like, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like seamless upbringing, and clearly not. Clearly you've been through some really hard stuff. And it's just, you should never judge a book by its cover is kind of what I'm trying to say here. And I shouldn't be doing that. So.
Yeah, but it's really easy to do that. And I think one of the benefits of living a spiritual life and trying to really be grateful for, getting into the position I'm in is that, I get to share my experience with people. And one of my favorite things just being at Discover Strength is, a lot of people ask me how I end up here, right? Like, oh, you're not from Minnesota? Because there's so many like native Minnesotans here. What brought you up here? And at first I was very hesitant to share the real reason. But, the longer I've been sober, the more I realize that so many people are affected by addiction, whether it's personally or somebody in their life, someone who's valuable to them, that they care about, that they just can't seem to do anything about. And I've had so many amazing conversations and connections with clients that I made simply from the fact that I don't drink anymore, right? And I'm able to empathize with them and connect with them in a way that I would argue none of our other trainers are, because I get what they're going through. And some of the most successful people I've ever met struggle with crazy demons inside, right? But it's how we, do you listen to Jordan Peterson at all?
Oh, I love Jordan Peterson. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes of his, and I'm going to massacre this, but it's something to the effect of, you can't truly experience gratitude and being a good person until you've dealt with the horrible thoughts and the demons that we all possess, right? So essentially, somebody who's good because they were brought up to be good and that's all they've ever known, that's great. You can be an awesome person and it's probably nice to be around you. But your goodness is not as authentic as somebody who has seen evil and has chosen to be good in spite of it. And that's kind of what I try to practice.
Yeah, good for you. 12 Rules for Life was a total game changer.
Amazing. Yeah.
Seriously, that combined with just his stuff on YouTube and his appearances on Rogan changed my life completely.
For sure.
I was exposed to that whilst I was living here in Galway in Ireland, and it just made me grow up like really, really fast, and allowed me to take my relationship to the next level, commit in terms of marriage. So obviously we're engaged and then have a child together. And also just made me feel 100 times happier. Like I don't know how to define being depressed, and maybe if I don't know how to define what depression is, maybe I've never been depressed, but I can certainly tell you that during a lot of my 20s I just wasn't really feeling it, and just since coming across his work and really changing my mindset on things and just learning how to think differently, and also I should say, this is really important, I had therapy for the last few years every single week. I don't have it so much now because I don't have as much stuff to resolve, but I had a lot, and we all have baggage, and that was kind of in parallel with discovering Jordan Peterson's stuff, and so all together, that had a huge impact on me. So I'm a huge advocate of, when people say to me, should I do therapy? I'm straight away, like, yes. And this is who you should contact if they're in the UK. It's the return on investment from therapy is enormous. Just in terms of like being able to speak, talk about your thoughts and your insecurities and your challenges and all of those things, makes you just able to be so much happier and more productive in everyday life. So
I mean, we, especially as men, we feel this need to kind of keep everything self-contained, and that's the slow killer of men for sure. And the only other thing I'll say on that with like Jordan Peterson stuff and just in general in the recovery community, a lot of similar principles that he outlines in his book. And, one of the weirdest things I've experienced with this whole pandemic going on is just this overwhelming sense of gratitude. And there is not a chance in a million years that if this was 3.5 years ago before I got sober, like I'd probably be dead in my apartment somewhere, just blaming the entire world for my situation. And, just feeling like poor me this whole time. And all I've been able to feel, even though I'm scared, even though I don't know what's going to come out on the other end of this, I'm just so thankful that I'm not in that life anymore, that I'm not in that position, and that I get to do something that I love, even though now it's changed. I've just had this feeling of gratitude just every day when I wake up, and it's, I owe that entirely to doing that self-work like you're talking about. So
just gives you perspective, right, on the situation.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. It's I feel a similar way, and it's that's awesome. That's been the outcome of all this work you've done. So let's carry on from where we left off there.
Yeah.
So you finished in the rehab place, but you still have obviously some ongoing support there.
Yep.
So what happened when you came out? You were like, I'm just going to stay in Minnesota. What was the first job you got coming out then?
Well, oddly enough, I worked at a bar.
Not a good idea.
Yeah. Well, so we have like halfway houses here. We call them sober houses in Minnesota. But the treatment center that I went to here, called The Retreat, has a few houses that they actually own. And I moved into one of those. I lived there for my first year and a half in Minnesota. So I stayed well past like the 6 months they recommend. And my first job was actually my old job that I talked about in college. So I worked for a company called World of Beer. And I found a World of Beer in St. Paul. And I was like, well, I know how to do that. And I just need some money at the moment. So I was actually a cocktail waitress there, or just a server instead of a bartender. Because I figured I could just hand drinks off, but maybe being back there making drinks probably wasn't the best idea. And then I was looking for jobs. I did have that background. I'd always exercised, and I had a passion for resistance training, but had never actually been a personal trainer before. And I was applying to a bunch of different places. I applied with Lifetime, a couple other places. I didn't have any certifications yet, though. So I was studying for my ACE at the time, and I found My Strength Studio in Minnetonka, and I reached out to Kevin, and he agreed to have an interview with me. And he even said in his LinkedIn job application, or wherever it was, Indeed maybe, you don't need a certification. I was like, perfect, that's me, I can do that. So I go to this studio, and we have our first interview, and he is just the nicest man I've ever met. And at this point, I'm probably 4 months sober, 3 or 4 months sober. And we're chatting, and he kind of asked what brought me to Minnesota. And this was the first time talking to somebody not in the community, where I was just completely open with him. And I told him my whole story, and he just sat there with his mouth hanging open, because he's, he's a really wonderful Christian man, like great family upbringing. He's got 5 kids. He's just the nicest man I've ever met. And he's kind of letting all of this noodle around a little. And he's like, you know what, let's do our second interview. Like, I want you to come back. I'll give you a workout, and we'll see how this goes. So he invites me back, and we do a workout, and I thought I was going to die. I was like, I work out, and we do super slow on the Renex leg press, and he blows me up on the pull down, and just unlike anything I'd experienced before. And I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And he decided to give me an opportunity. So I learned everything from him. I mean, at the time I was planning on going and training with Josh Trentine. That was the eventual plan, to get my actual super slow certification. But there was just a variety of things that came up along the way where it couldn't happen. So he was just kind of training me in-house, and it's a small operation. So at some point I just needed to start taking clients. So I was shadowing him a bunch. I started taking clients. Before I know it, it's 6 months in, and he's like, yeah, we're probably not going to get your certification, but you're doing great. So just keep up what you're doing. And I built a real foundation there, and learned a lot, and read all of Ken's work, read Arthur Jones' bulletins. And we would Kevin and I would just have these awesome discussions about the philosophy of exercise, and like different ideas. And he never shot anything down. He was, always wanted to hear my thoughts, and just kind of let me naturally grow. And the reason I say I owe everything to him is he told me later on, about a year into my training, that when I first came in, he was unsure about offering me a position because, I was only 4 months sober at the time.
Sure.
And he's got a small business. He didn't know, if it was worth the risk, right?
Like, he saw something in you, didn't he? He saw something in you.
Well, he told me this story that got me really teary. He was talking to his son, who's like 5 or 6 at the time. And he asked his son, he's like, hey, here's what's going on. What do you think? And he's like, do you like him? He's like, yeah, I really like him. He's like, I think you should give him a shot. And I was like, so you owe my son your job because he's the one that convinced me to give you a shot. So, wow. I have a really soft spot in my heart for Kevin and Miles Strong. And, I owe him everything. So.
Wow. So, I guess we've touched on before, but then, I'd love to hear, since joining Miles Strong, getting a foundation in HIIT, super slow, and then obviously moving on to Discover Strength to continue that growth. How has that changed you?
Well, I was just a ship without a compass for a long time. Pardon the crappy analogy, but
that's a great analogy.
But I was just floating around mindlessly, floating through life and feeling sorry for myself and not really knowing what I wanted to do. And I think one of the kind of archetypes for somebody who's struggling in addiction is they have all these big ideas, but will never actually execute on anything. So I had all these grandiose plans of things that I wanted to accomplish. But meanwhile, I was, finishing every night, dropping the bottle as I, passed out in bed. Right. So never actually took any initiative on anything. As soon as I started with Strength Studio, I started writing my book, which eventually became How to Look Good Naked. I was reading all the time. I all of a sudden had this new vigor and I just wanted to learn. And I couldn't get enough information and why these things worked the way they did. And then Discover Strength just took that to the next level. We do a lot of learning in-house. And I had great discussions with my trainer, Bronson, who brought me on when I was there. I've been able to challenge the process countless times at Discover Strength. And not all of those things that I throw against the wall stick, but I've made real profound changes within the company, I feel. And one of the things Luke talks about is, if you left, you should strive in your work that if you left, people will remember that you were there, right? And I feel like I've definitely left my mark on Discover Strength and will continue to do that. And they've given me the opportunity to really blossom with the seminars that I've been asked to do. I did my last one on Body by Science, actually. So that was great. Had a big turnout for those. Just talked about 10 big takeaways from the book Body by Science. And, Luke is helping me in the future so that I can start speaking at seminars at other places. I'd love to be a keynote speaker at some point. And they're just really nurturing that growth in a way that, like I said, I'm so grateful for. So.
Yeah, you're a great communicator. Having you on the podcast, the last episode and this one, you're very clear in your speech and articulate, and I think that's why you make a great contributor to this podcast. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, so I think that it's definitely working to your strengths for sure, and it's great that he's helping sort of steer you in that direction. I was going to ask actually, what is the long term look like for Logan?
Man, I don't know. I think I had kind of an idea of what that might look like. But what's that quote is, man plans and God laughs, right? So, I
said that when I had a child.
Yeah. So my goal right now is just make it out the other end of this and then kind of reevaluate. And at the moment, I'm just trying to bring as much value to the table as I can every day. I'd like to look ahead and say at some point that, Logan is a multiple franchise owner of Discover Strength locations and, traveling around the country, helping educate people. That's one of the things I'm most passionate about, is just getting people excited about high intensity training and sharing my passion with them. But honestly, I don't know what the future is going to look like at this point. And really, I just want to flash forward to, 8-10 months from now. And then you can check back with me and tell me what I think the future is going to look like then.
So you said there about joining Mara Strong and then going on to DS, has clearly helped you and given you direction. Now, making you more aware of your future, how you want to prioritize your time now, how has that helped your addiction, if at all?
I think just having focus is super important, and having, we're reading a book as a company right now for what we call PDG, or personal growth development growth. I'm probably screwing that up. Personal something growth. And it's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which you recommended, and that's why we're reading it. And I think the answer is within that book, in the sense of having a purpose, having something to wake up for that gets you out of bed. The last time we did this together, you asked me what success looks like. Mm-hmm. And I said, it's not wanting to snooze your alarm in the morning. Right. And I truly believe that. Like, there was a very long time in my life where I didn't feel that there was anything worth getting out of bed for. Today, I can truly say that, like, I get the opportunity to help people, and that excites me. To educate people really excites me. Thinking about the future can get a little daunting, but trying to stay present and just realize that I get to help people today, that's more than enough meaning, and more than enough of a driving force to help me stay focused.
People need you now more than ever. I mean, I'm just looking at myself, and my exercise and diet habits have fell off quite a bit. I mean, my fiance has been baking banana cake in the kitchen like all day today, and she's baking all these things because she's keeping herself occupied whilst looking after Arthur, and so I'm struggling, but I'm doing okay. I'm using intermittent fasting to my advantage, but I think, like, if I'm pretty disciplined and consistent with diet and training, and, like, if I'm struggling, then the average Joe is like, and that makes me sound really arrogant, but someone who's not,
I know what you mean,
into training and diet is really, and it's a stressful situation. People are under stress financially. People are bored out of their minds, it's important right now that obviously we take on new skills and maybe start that online business you wanted to start, or whatever it is. But a lot of people are struggling to do that, and so right now I feel like having someone like you in their corner to help them stay on top of their training is just more valuable than ever. More valuable pre-crisis. Because it's helping people get through this and keeping their health intact, or dare I say, improve their health during this time. So
for sure. And one of the things that I'm extremely fortunate that Luke has let me do, and that I'm still doing at the moment, is about 8 months, probably almost a year ago, I asked the leadership team if it would be okay if I started training guys in early sobriety at some of the Discover Strength locations, just as a something that I wanted to do on my own, like not wanting to get paid for it, doing it outside of work hours, just allowing them the opportunity to come in and do something productive that they can feel good about. And, that program was great. I think we gave away something like $3,000 in services that I was able to donate my time for last year, and I'm hoping at some point to increase that amount, exponentially over my time with DS. But I've been able to FaceTime with guys in their sober house the last couple of weeks and give them a virtual workout, and it's the highlight of the week. These are guys that are locked in with 10 or 12 other guys that are, like you said, just climbing up the walls, right? And I think that's the perfect example of somebody who's maybe struggling emotionally and mentally, like you said, financially probably strapped because they're in early recovery, and then got all these things going on through their head. So you can just extrapolate that out from somebody who's in recovery and early sobriety and just apply that across the board. Like releasing endorphins, getting some work, like Luke has said in a few of his Instagram videos, just like blowing off steam, doing hard work with muscles is one of the most important things we can do to relieve stress, especially right now. So what we and all of our colleagues are offering, I think, is just more important than ever.
Yeah, totally agree. Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you for going through all of that. I think what you've done there in terms of the pro bono training for people trying to get sober is very, very impressive, and that's a wonderful thing that you're doing. So no, I didn't realize that, and I hope you should definitely try and continue that for sure.
Yeah, and I have to give a shout out to the rest of my team at the Woodbury location too, because they've all been great advocates as well, and they all know my story. And I asked if they'd be able and willing to take sober guys when the opportunity arose, and they all, without even blinking an eye, agreed to do that and take time out of their day. So I'm just, again, really, really thankful for my team there as well. So Jake, Christian, and Carly, thank you.
Awesome. What's the difference in the culture? I mean, obviously it sounds like you've worked in some pretty dysfunctional cultures and teams in the past, in hospitality perhaps, but and I'm not sure whether you've got many reference points, but what is it like? What's the Discover Strength team culture like versus cultures you've experienced in the past?
That's a great one. Because you talk about gratitude, and I think the definition of hospitality could be dysfunction as far as teams go. It's basically varying levels of people in addiction, essentially, is the majority of the industry. So lots of dysfunction before coming to DS, and struggles that Kevin maybe had just as a small business owner. But that was a big step up from all the things I'd experienced in the past. And then coming to DS, which is like this well-oiled machine, just the amount of gratitude I have to be a part of that is, even when I'm frustrated at work, it's nothing compared to what I've dealt with. So if anything, I feel sorry for the people that this is their first job, and potentially they'll move on to something else at some point, because they will probably never experience something that runs as well as this again. Yeah. So for this to be your first thing and be frustrated, which unfortunately some of our trainers are, because Luke gets them right out of college. So to think that this might be dysfunctional is like, you got a tough road ahead of you if you ever leave. So I don't know if that totally answers your question, but.
No, it does. Yeah, I've said it before, but I think if I were growing up in Minnesota, I'd have definitely applied for a job at DS without a doubt. I'm a huge fan. That's no secret. I'm probably too much of a fan. I probably need to stop interviewing you guys and start talking to some other people.
Yeah, you even called me Luke in your intro. Got a little love triangle going on there.
Oh God, don't say that. But I've had Luke on the podcast so much, and it's sometimes I think even Luke emailed me once and said, Lawrence, I think people are going to get annoyed with me. I'm like, how can you say that? And actually, it's quite the opposite, because I've had I get such, every time I do content with Luke, I get such great feedback, and I just don't think there's anyone better at articulating and discussing the different aspects of business. And he just has so much class, in the way he does it. Yeah. And it's so valuable, because with him, I have different styles, right? So this is really, I enjoy this because it's very conversational, it's very unstructured. I have some questions obviously pre-planned, but we're going in all sorts of directions, and I love that. Yeah. But at the same time, what I love with Luke is I can have a structure and I know he'll follow that to a T.
Yeah.
But it makes it sound like a cyborg, doesn't it?
No. But I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
But we can also go off and have a joke, or he'll go off on a story or a tangent, and then we come back. And he's very, very aware of that. And that's really, as a host, it's very easy for me to create something of quality when I have someone like that. So it's like, I think you have to be quite adaptable. But having experience with different people in this industry, I'm able to try and get the most out of them for different contexts. So that's quite fun.
Well, I think it's just going to add more authority going forward to all that content you've created with him in the past as we move past this hard time, and you guys continue to recap how Discover Strength has made this pivot and continued to be successful in this challenging time. All that lip service that he may be paid to being an entrepreneur and, how to create a successful business, right? You could say that that's like talking to Warren Buffett about how to invest in stocks, right?
Yeah.
Well, now he's putting his money where his mouth is, and the rubber meets the road here to just continue to drill analogies, right? But, we're seeing that all that stuff that he talked about, he actually does. Right. So I think if anything, it's going to even add to the authority of that content you've already created. And you're probably going to have people thirsting for more of his, his content going forward.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. I think I think we've already got a library that's completely free on the podcast of practically a formula for building a successful business in high intensity training or in fitness in general. When I was planning for our studio here in Galway, which is unfortunately on pause, obviously, because of all this, I was re-listening to a lot, every episode I did with him. Just going through each one and using that to help with our strategy and also reviewing some stuff in the membership. But you don't even need to join the membership. I mean, there is such great stuff.
Don't say that.
Well, no, I mean, there is value in the membership. I mean, obviously they get other value from me and community and Q&As and exclusive stuff and great stuff from Luke in there and other people. But what I mean is you can still get so much value from the free content.
For sure.
And that not obviously I've had some loads of great guests, but obviously we're talking about Luke specifically. And just listening to the first few episodes he did on the show where he talks about uniques, differentiators, target market, how to generate revenue, retention, all these things. It's just awesome. It's just to have someone who can talk about it within our niche so well is really useful.
For sure.
So no, I've been through that in planning for our own studio, which unfortunately has been postponed. But we'll be back on that as soon as things return to normal. My business partner has more important stuff to worry about right now with this whole crisis affecting.
I can imagine
other interests of his. So there you go. So. Awesome. So we kind of we went through your story there, which I really appreciate. And that was really good to just learn more about what you've been through and how that's changed you as a person, which I think is actually quite a good segue into going back for a moment to talking about this crisis in relation to the studio strategy. I think we've spoken about this offline before. I think you have a great head for business and you've really immersed yourself in high intensity training and you see what DS do. And I understand there's certain things that DS do that are private and confidential. So, those things we probably can't talk about, but I'd just really love to hear your perspective on what you think the HIT studio owners and trainers should be doing right now in response to this crisis. Obviously, there's virtual training, but do you want to just elaborate on what you think is important right now?
From a business perspective?
Yeah, both business and as a personal trainer. I think both.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing you could do right now is just contact your clients that you currently have and using the email list that you have at your disposal, and just whether or not they see value in virtual training. One, don't be afraid to make the ask of like, hey, I'm going to offer you a complimentary session if you feel confident in what you're doing, because I think there's so much value in this. and I want you to experience it for yourself first. Even if they've been with you for 10 years, if they're on the fence, but you know that you're not going to open up anytime soon, hey, offer them a free session, get them back in the door, win them over again. And then the bigger thing than that is just, even if they don't want to continue with you at this point, whether it's financial or they just don't feel that they can do anything at the moment, be in their corner. Be supportive. Let them know that you're thinking about them. One of the biggest things I've been doing with the emails that I've been sending to people is getting away from, or the phone calls that I've been having is getting away from like cookie cutter templates and just saying, hey, Lawrence, how's your kid? How are you doing? How's your fiance? How's life? Are you okay? Is your job all right? Do you want to talk on the phone? Like, I think one of the things we do so well at Discover Strength that is so powerful in our culture is that we cultivate relationships with people. And like, there are clients that I genuinely care about. And it's most of them, if not all of them, right? I definitely care about all of my clients, right? But I've definitely created relationships with people where even if they're not training, I actually care what's going on in their life. So I don't think you can necessarily create that out of thin air, but you can for sure try to build those relationships now as a business owner and just let people know like, hey, I'm in your corner. If you need anything, if there's some equipment that I have that you're close by that you can come and pick up so that we can do these virtual workouts, hey, come get it. I'll drop it off to you. Whatever we need to do to just add that value of like, you are not just a client to me, you are a friend in business. And I just want to continue this relationship through this tough time.
Yeah, amazing advice. I think that's great. I think everyone should be executing on that 100%. Yeah, I mean, just in terms of services, so you mentioned obviously virtual training, which I think is probably ideal for most of our colleagues to really invest in right now. But what's your take on alternatives? I mean, I know you guys have started doing a subscription model for providing email workouts via email. There's people out there doing video courses. I don't know, fit tips via email, YouTube. Maybe they're expanding on the virtual training to do more in the way of like life coaching / nutritional coaching as well. But what's your take on the service portfolios that can be explored here in this crisis, do you think?
You mean as, again, from like the studio owner perspective?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, how they might be able to pivot in other ways, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a small studio owner, getting yourself comfortable reaching out to colleagues. Like we've had quite a few people that have reached out from different businesses, and I don't necessarily want to name any, but that have, contacted Luke directly and said like, hey, can we kind of see what you guys are doing? And like I said, I mean, right now we've got 7 billion potential clients. So all of us building our brands together virtually, nobody's going to be left behind as long as you're bringing something high quality to the table, right?
Yeah.
So I think this works if you're a one-person shop. I think it works if you're like us, 40 people. I think it works if you're Perfect Workout and you've got 60 locations. Like as long as everybody's rowing in the same direction, as a small studio owner, I think dialing into people's living rooms is probably even more advantageous to you because you've created those really valuable relationships where like you can take an hour with someone, catch up, have a little coffee before, and if they're willing to pay the full session price, which hopefully they are, you don't necessarily have to do as many sessions as you might be in studio to quote unquote keep the lights on right now, because I know a lot of people are struggling with or figuring out ways to like pay their rent or defer their rent for the moment, right? So hopefully overhead for a lot of people is down at the moment and they just need to worry about getting some kind of revenue stream in. I think if you are a place that has nutritional supplements, maybe trying to deliver those to people, add some revenue that way. You could maybe help people get equipment delivered. I think you just have to be creative. The business side I leave to Luke. That's not really my wheelhouse. I just try to.
No, it's fine. It's just interesting to get your perspective as someone who's on the inside, looking at what's happening around you and what you guys are implementing. But there's some good ideas. I mean, I've already recorded podcasts that are just in the tank that are going to give people so many ideas. And as we were speaking, talking about offline, I'm just trying to get my partner, who helps me with that stuff, to just get this produced ASAP, because it's not helping anyone when it's on my laptop. It needs to be out there, published. I had a really good conversation with someone who's not even in HIT. He's just an entrepreneur who helps fitness businesses generate leads, and he's very successful. And he was telling me that one of the best things to do right now is just text, and specifically texting, because SMS has a much higher open and response rate than email. Email's still good, but text is even better if you can get it. And just text, a personal text, like you were saying, to all of your clients and former clients. So it's a good reactivation strategy too, and just offer a free virtual workout.
Or call. I mean, it seems like, in our industry, we tend to attract an older client base anyways that actually remembers a time before cell phones and cordless phones, and rotary dials and stuff like that. So these are people that, it might be a little archaic for them too, but getting a phone call from someone that's not, a solicitor is going to be welcome, right? And I've talked more on the phone in the last week than I probably have in the last decade. So I don't think there's anything wrong with texting, but I think if you can add that personal touch and talk to someone, it's just super beneficial. And just thinking about all this as we're kind of chatting, I don't think there's anything wrong with a subscription model and like creating videos for people to do. But I just think as a trainer, as somebody who understands the value of supervision, being able to chat with somebody and look at them and see their performance of the reps just gives you so much more value in the marketplace. Because right now, Beachbody is making a push. All of these other virtual training companies, Chris Hemsworth has one. It's like Center 6 or something like that. There's 1,000 virtual workouts that you can do. My Instagram has been absolutely flooded with new at-home technologies. I'm forgetting the names of all of them right now, but like little things you can mount on the wall that are essentially like a Peloton for at-home workouts. Some of them have resistance built in. Some of them are just, it's a kickboxing thing, right? There's so much competition in the marketplace, but the biggest difference is that person's not actually seeing you, right? It's still a video. It's still a recording. And if you've ever done any at-home workouts before, like Beachbody, P90X, any of that stuff, you're just going to take a break. If it gets hard, you're going to take a break. There's nobody there to hold you accountable. 100%. So the level is not the same, right? So you have to add value by seeing someone, by actually being there.
That's where the price point is justified. When you're charging premium price, you're getting a much better value and a much better service. You're 100% right. That is one of the downsides of content or products people can buy. Well, in the case of content, if we look at like video training, a lot of it's commoditized. It's free. You can just go on YouTube and there's already tons and tons of workouts on there, even HIIT workouts, if you're really strict about finding something that's really productive in a HIIT context. It's commoditized. And so it's hard to sell that, and it's hard to sell it at a price point that's going to make sense. Whereas you cannot commoditize your expertise. You guys are so well trained. You've got strong backgrounds, and that really sets you apart. And there's a lot of value in that. So that is how, that's how you can really differentiate yourself. Because I know as we were saying at the beginning of this, there's a lot of naysayers around. You won't be able to charge this price point for very long. I completely disagree. I know for a fact that there are, as you were alluding to, there are people who have been offering virtual training, online coaching services. That's kind of what I do in a HIIT business context, right? For a long period of time, charging astronomical figures to provide that.
And a lot of those programs aren't even viewing you. So that's the biggest differentiator too, is like, I think of, Gary Knight, and I don't know his personal like setup that he has with people, but I remember listening to his conversation with you, and he's talking about creating programs for people, right? So you're talking about charging, say $300 a month, right, to do a virtual coaching session with someone, and then give them a workout prescription that they're going to do on their own, right? And I'm just making that number up, $300 a month, right? Well, you're still not there, right? Now, I feel like all of a sudden the industry has just had this turn on, because when I thought of virtual coaching before too, I thought of those as two separate things. There's a workout prescription that you give to someone that you create based on their needs. And then there's the coaching afterwards. And hey, you're going to take videos on your own and send them to me, and I'll critique you and do all this stuff. It's like nobody had the idea to go, oh yeah, I can just dial in. It's 2020 and actually watch you do what you're doing. So I think it's just kind of opened up this whole new marketplace, at least in my mind, because I wasn't having that idea before, for sure.
I mean, both options work. And obviously one is more leveraged than the other. You are trading your time. And that's the only limitation there with the virtual training. But, it depends on what your goals are, and it obviously work very well. But, it's funny how you wouldn't have thought about this before, really. I wouldn't have really thought about it either. And it's like, would your customers have even thought about it if they weren't forced into this position, which is interesting, because now that they're forced into it, they're like, oh, actually, this is really valuable. And a cohort of those people may decide they want to just continue that,
Yeah. And going back to your point you had before about like, is this going to devalue what we do? I mean, I go back to that car example, right? Like if we're living in a world where all of a sudden cars disappear, and your only option is a horse and buggy, which might be what we're doing right now with virtual training. Like, shit, if you need to get across town, you're going to take the horse and buggy, right? But once we make that evolution to go back to having Maseratis and Bugattis and all the great stuff, like, you might buy your Maserati again, right? You probably are going to. So I think our market is the people who are willing to do something right now because they understand the value of it, and they know that it's such a step up, in the horse and buggy example, from just walking across town. Well, now you've got that quick, efficient, evidence-based approach to get to where you're trying to go. And I don't think it devalues the fact that there's also a higher level, which might be the studios,
Yeah, and make no mistake, as soon as my studio is up and running here, I will be training in there as often as possible. No more body weight stuff for me, or at least not for the foreseeable. I'm excited about getting back on the awesome machine, so I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, for sure.
One last question for you, mate.
Okay.
How is this? I'm just curious. I've spoken to a few people. I've not been that good with the whole video calls. I've done a few, but I'm interested to know how this is affecting you generally, not just as a trainer, but just your life. Like what habits have changed for you? How has this affected you really? Be interested to hear.
Just like day to day?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm valuing the sunshine a lot more now. Honestly, I've been joking with my managers and stuff that like I feel like I'm working more now than I did before. And I think the reasoning for that is because we're just kind of always on call at the moment, right? Like we're having these conversations all the time as a whole company. We're trying to really pay attention to our Slack channels in case there's anything pertinent that comes up. So it's just a little more conscious awareness all the time. But as far as day to day, I mean, besides sitting in my chair at home as opposed to being at the studio, really not too much has changed. It just feels different because I can see the window from where I'm sitting, right? And I know that I'm at my house. So there's this kind of cognitive dissonance of like, wait, am I working or am I at home, right? So that's still taking some time to adjust to. But overall, I mean, I get outside when I can. I think a lot of us are probably realizing how much we didn't do as much as we could have when we had the opportunity to do it. And a lot of us just go through the motions of we go to work, we come home, we turn on Netflix, right? Well, now we're just taking out the go to work part. So I think hopefully it's going to create an appreciation for, nature, for getting outside, for seeing friends, for going to a restaurant. I hope that's the outcome of this.
So the rules here are it's quote unquote in lockdown, but we're allowed to exercise once a day outside. And it's supposed to be for an hour. I think that might just be the UK. I'm not sure if that's Ireland as well. But then everything's closed except, some sort of cafes and restaurants you can actually go in and collect food, but you can't sit down and eat. Supermarkets are open, obviously, but it's like 100 maximum can be in there at any one time, and it's 1 in, 1 out.
Gotcha.
So that's basically the gist, although I'm breaking lots of those rules because I'm walking the dog like 4 times a day, and I'm, going for walks with the missus and the baby. But we are sensibly social distancing, so I'm not doing anything too bad. But is that the same in Minnesota? And what's the situation in Minnesota then?
I mean, so people in Minnesota, when it gets to be about April and the sun comes out, just absolutely lose their minds, right? Because we've been locked down in, winter and the doldrums of that for 6 or 8 months by that point. So what I can tell you is there's definitely still people out. Like I've been trying to go for bike rides and walks. There's a little lake and a park right by my house that I've been going to, and there's people there and they're practicing social distancing as they're walking or riding their bikes or whatever it might be, but it's not nearly as concentrated as it usually is. I mean, I'm not kidding you, Lawrence. Like when the sunshine comes out here, even if it's 40 degrees, like that first day of spring, people are in shorts. They're absolutely crazy. They're just everywhere all over town. They just can't get enough of it. Yeah. So it's definitely less concentrated than it normally is. But I think people are still trying to get out when they can, for sure.
Yeah. And by the way, for context, if anyone's listening to this thinking, when did they record this? This is recorded on April the 8th. So the 8th of April, 2020, and it will probably be published towards the end of April. I'm not quite sure yet. Awesome, Logan. This has been a lot of fun, and I think even better than the first one. What's the best way for people to find out more about you and get your book?
So howtolookgoodnaked.com, www.howtolookgoodnaked.com, the number 2 instead of TO. I've had a friend who lives in Thailand that's just redone the whole website and it looks amazing now. I'm really, really happy. Yeah. You should definitely check it out. There's links all over there. Yeah. There's links all over to purchase the book. You can just type it in on Amazon as well. You can reach me at Logan@howtolookgoodnaked.com. or just Logan@discoverstrength.com.
I'm looking at it. It's just loading.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Awesome. Very nice.
So she's put some really cool graphics and stuff. I need to still update some of the content, but it's 1,000 times better than the last time we spoke. So
you look like a catalog model in one of those pictures. like you're one of those, like, I don't know, like big, thick, like retailer catalogs.
Yeah.
You know
well,
I mean?
my dad's a photographer, so that.
Okay, that's useful. That's useful.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks great. Awesome. Okay, so good stuff. No, I really appreciate you taking the time. And
no, it's been a pleasure.
We'll be doing more in the future, and I hope obviously things return to normal as quickly as possible where you are. Yeah, because I know it's a great opportunity, virtual training, yay, all that good stuff. But let's be honest, we want to be back on the machines. We do want to be back in the studios. We want to be connecting with people physically, face to face. I just don't think that's going to go away.
100%. I've heard some people talking about like how handshakes are going to leave. In my mind, I mean, if anybody's going to let me when I start seeing clients again, everybody's getting the biggest hug they've ever gotten. So I can't wait to just have, those physical connections again, for sure.
Awesome. And for everyone listening, to find the blog post for this episode and download the PDF transcript, please go to highintensitybusiness.com and search for episode 264. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.
Discover how to achieve your health and fitness goals, become a great personal trainer, and build a successful, high-intensity training business. Check out highintensitybusiness.com. highintensitybusiness.com.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field.